A 2009 Harley Davidson Sportster Nightster turned into an adventure bike. Is it any good? How did I enjoy taking it 1,000 miles? And how does it compare to something like, let's say, the new Pan America? One thing I can tell you, 100% absolute for sure, it sounds like a Harley Davidson, and that's an absolutely amazing thing when you're out there riding adventure. Alright, so like I said, this is a 2009 Harley Davidson Nightster, and we did quite a bit of work to turn it into this bike. We took and remanufactured the front triple trees and machined them out of aluminum and turned them into trees that would fit and hold a Suzuki 450 front end. The front forks were revalved and rebuilt, making them 2 inches shorter than what they would have been on the 450, but still quite a bit taller than what a front factory suspension would have been on here. So then we had to raise the back. On the back, we added the LegendSuspension Revo A's remote reservoirs. I run this shock on several of my bikes, and I absolutely love it. So I knew it would do good here. The difference is here I got their extended version, and then I added a block underneath it, raising that back end up so it would meet the front end. Pair that with a Trask all aluminum intake, a chain conversion kit and rear wheel from TCBros, a gauge relocation, some dirt bike bars, a new Saddleman seat, the custom fabbed front fairing that we had made all out of aluminum, and then sunk a Baja Designs headlight in there. I think it really turned out great. We also added some dirt bike foot pegs, a carved derby cover after my dog Scooter. If you guys have followed any of my adventures across America, I used to ride with a dog, and he passed on me recently, so kind of a tribute to him. Added some Moscow luggage, some bark busters for the hands, the front wheel off of the 450, a skid plate also from TCBros, and then we had to extend the kickstand quite a bit too because the bike was so much taller, it needed a longer kickstand. And that beautiful sound you heard, that's D&D exhaust. I run them on 2 of my bikes, and I am absolutely in love with the way they sound. They just sound wicked tough. I mean, any way you shake it, that exhaust sounds mean. So what do I think of it? That's the question. After 1,000 miles running basically around on-road and off-road, I think I've got enough seat time in it to give you some genuine opinions. Now, my experience in motorcycles is pretty good. I've done quite a bit of riding, and I feel like I understand motorcycles as a whole. My experience in dirt, not as great as street. I've only been doing it for a couple of years, but in those couple of years I've owned a Africa Twin that took it across the Trans-America Trail, owned a BMW GS 700, I have a KTM 500 dirt bike. So I've done a few trips, a few different places on adventure bikes and off-road bikes, and I have ridden the Pan America. I feel competent in giving a decent comparison after the miles I've put on this thing so far. So here's the deal. The trip I just took it on was the Mid-Atlantic BDR. It went from the tip of Tennessee to New York state line, Pennsylvania. I ended up having a breakdown, but it really had nothing to do with the design of the bike. It had to do with, I bought a used bike to build it, and I didn't replace the clutch, and the clutch went out, and then I got a charging system issue too. But I don't think those really are relevant to the ride comparison that we're talking about here today. That is more of a should you buy a new bike with a warranty versus a used bike that you're gonna have to sometimes troubleshoot. And that's a conversation for a whole nother video. My overall opinion is I like the bike. Actually, I'm in love with the bike. This is going to be a bike I plan on keeping for a very long time, if not forever. When I first built this bike, I thought I'd take it on a couple trips and then probably sell it. After riding it, I've decided that I really want to keep this bike. Not to mention by having it built by a veteran friend of mine and, you know, his involvement with motorcycle missions. It's just the bike's special to me in several reasons, but really the riding experience is top of that list. And the way it looks is right up there too with the love and the history. But at the end of the day, if you don't love riding a bike, it's nothing but a piece of art. And do I want to sit on a piece of art this big? Good news for me is I don't have to, because I absolutely love riding the bike. At initial run, it was a little awkward. It was a little top heavy for what I'm used to in the other adventure bikes I've ridden. And the bike itself is probably a little bit heavy. It's probably around 500 to 550 pounds. And you compare that to the Africa Twin, the BMW GS 700, the Pan America, and then my super light KTM 500, you know, you can see that the weight, it's substantial, but not grossly out of proportion. I just think it sits a little high. The way those triple trees set up, I had those built by Gigastat. As far as the tracking and the angle of riding, I think it was really good. I was able to do 80 miles on the interstate, and I was able to rip trails pretty well too. The travel in that front suspension was amazing. It was better than I expected off of this Sportster. I mean, it truly felt like an adventure bike suspension. It felt adequate and substantial, and it floated very, very nicely. The rear suspension, I'm not really too surprised, but again, floats very well. The travel's good. I never once bottomed the bike out, and I was loaded down decent, and I'm a 225-pound man, 6'2". So, you know, there was some weight on it, and that rear suspension I felt handled really good. It kept the rear wheel stable. It kept it to the ground. It tracked very well. Front and rear suspension, I just truly felt were more than adequate. They were substantial and frankly better than what I expected out of a 2009 Sportster off-road. The power of the 1200 I found also more than enough. I'd like to gear it a little bit different, maybe a bigger back sprocket might help, but there's torque there all day, and when you're hitting the higher speeds, you don't have to do as much shifting as you may have to in some other bikes. All in all, the diversity of being able to run down the interstate and being able to get back in the trails truly makes this what I would say an adventure bike, and I think it's a great adventure bike. In general, a man could build one of these bikes out, maybe not with the exact same parts I have or whatever, but you could build one of these bikes out realistically for under $10,000. Although when you look at the Pan America price, $10,000 seems like a real steal, but then when you compare it to like a Tenere 700 or a Honda Africa Twin, the price comparison becomes a little bit more evident. Now you're comparing a brand new bike built purpose for adventuring versus an over 10-year motorcycle hand built to go off-road. I mean, there's a comparison there. I mean, reliability, engineering. These things are places where the Africa Twin, the BMW, the Pan America, all are really going to outperform this motorcycle. There's really no contest when it comes to performance versus a Pan America and this bike. There's no contest when it comes to statistics between the Honda or the BMW and this bike. There is absolutely no comparison. Those bikes are superior, they are better. But there are a couple things that this bike gets right that those don't. And they're things that may not be important to too many of you, but to many riders, they're a fairly big deal. One is the uniqueness and the cool factor of taking a bike and building it and turning it into something. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have a chopper scene, a bobber scene, a cafe racer scene. There's a lot of wonderful, awesome, super exciting and enjoyable motorcycles that are made that technically don't perform as good as they did factory, but they just give a different feel of the ride. And after all, many of us ride just to escape. For many of us, the ride is the feeling and not just the machine's performance capabilities. So, comparing it to a Pan America, is it as good or is it a better? Which should you buy? Well, it's a better deal financially, but reliability-wise and performance-wise, the Pan America is going to be a superior motorcycle. But when it comes to cool factor and enjoyment and pulling up to a stop and having a bike different than everybody else's, one you can really be proud of and enjoy, well then, of course, my Rooster, my Sportster adventure bike over there, takes the cake a millionfold. I'll park this next to any Pan America in anywhere in the country, step off of this, and feel proud and confident and excited. And frankly, probably more people are going to come up and look at this bike than they do a Pan America. And it's not just my bike, it's just the nature of the beast. Motorcycles are extensions of our personality. It's a big piece of the culture, especially in the Harley world, and this type of bike absolutely screams it. I mean, I'm confident to say it's not just good looks, it's also good performing. I enjoy it. I would take this all the way up Alaska. I would take it through South America. Parts are going to be easy to come by, certainly a lot easier than a Pan America would be. There's a lot of benefits to this bike too, and if you're asking me, should you or should you not build out a Sportster dirt bike, my answer is going to be, no matter what else you have in your garage, yes, if you can, do it, because it's a lot of fun, it's super cool, and it just makes you feel good when you're riding it. And it's a Harley Davidson, it just sounds it. When I pull up on this bike, it gives me a completely different feel than when I pulled up on my Honda Africa Twin or anything else. That engine, that combustion underneath, it's just something that feels good, that we tend to like in the V-twin motorcycle world, and this is a classic V-twin. Compare it to things like the Pan America, That engine is absolutely unbelievable and is, I think, definitely the future for Harley Davidson as that engine. I think you see that engine in a lot of motorcycles coming up. So you can't really compare the two on performance. It's just kind of a style. It's an exciting, unique way to share your personality. That's just a little bit different from everybody else's. Another downfall that this bike has is it's air cooled. When you're off-road and you're dealing at lower speeds, you're getting less airflow and the bike's gonna run a little bit hotter. I'm looking at maybe putting in an extra oil cooler or even some fans to help move air on it. It hasn't been a problem yet for me, but I've got a 2009 and it's fuel injected. These guys who had carburetors, a lot of them were vapor locking and locking up out there on the trail. So that's a major downside to going with a carburetor on something like this, and also an issue that they're both gonna experience when it comes to heat. A liquid cooled engine like in the Pan America, that obviously has a whole nother line of benefits. So if you grasp what I'm saying here, guys, I love my Harley Sportster. I love riding it off-road. It's gonna be one of my bikes that I ride in a lot of videos coming up, but it's not gonna outperform any of those other bikes, but it could put just as many smiles on my face as a lot of those other bikes. But then again, I don't know that I've ever ridden a bike I didn't smile while riding. Food for thought. If you build one, hey, go over to my Facebook page and share a picture of it. I'd love to see your art, your style, your personality as it comes through into your motorcycle. Hey, y'all stay stubborn out there. Put your mind to whatever you want, and no matter what kind of motorcycle you want to ride, don't let anybody else talk you out of it. Ride what you want to ride. Make yourself happy first. And if people try to tell you you're wrong, you just stay stubborn. And I'll see you in the next video.